me, what is the difference we're talking about? You say that the assessment should be, and they say the assessment should be. What's the number of dollars?
They're asking for the 6.8. We have it assessed at 10.5, and all we've asked is that the assessment stay at the 10.5.
So they're asking for 6.8 in value.
Yes, sir.
On your-
For just the real estate, excluding the personal property. And I think we have to remember here, the personal property is assessed at $3 million.
How come your application uses 7.7?
7.8, yeah. That was my question.
The application was originally filed?
Yeah.
Well, I've had time to discuss things over with the assessor's office and do further analysis, and that's how I came up with a different number.
Just make a point to the board. Those three comparable sales that you see in there that are derived here locally, the range in value for those is $51,000, $112,000. I believe it's plausible that value per room is reflective of the investor's anticipation of the income stream that would be generated from it. Mr. McLaughlin is presenting to you a value that would equal $35,000 a room, roughly $25,000 below the lowest range in our market here per room. Now, there is an economy of scale that exists in hotels, and yes, with the more rooms, you're going to get some decrease in the overall price per room. But to estimate that a $25,000 reduction per room is occurring here is extremely hard for at least me to believe, given the market evidence that we've presented today.
Did you do any analysis of the capitalization rate in the local area?
No, sir, other than the conversations I had with
And
Koch and Darfur.
in your form, you have a little box. It says direct capitalization rates.
Yeah, that was,
Where did
that's,
that come from?
that's national statistics. That was a recap. That was done in another valuation appeal.
Who produces that box? I'm sorry.
Well, it comes from National Reporting Services, like Pinnell Kerr Foster, Corpaz, Hotel Investment Survey.
Agree with that box?
Some of the same resources as well. Like I said, our capitalization rate is a combination of our look at the national averages, but then to start to look back at our local rates. What are we getting in a particular market? So we believe that it's reflective of the
Well,
action.
I would suggest, or I would ask you, doesn't the capitalization rate vary between locations?
Yes.
Have anything else?
That was my original question was.
Okay, I have a couple of questions, and we're fairly informal here. So we go back and forth between the assessor cross-examining you and you cross-examining the assessor. But has anybody on this, from the assessor's office or the applicant, used figures from other comparable facilities in the state of California to this facility relative to the convention center that's here? Case in point, Fresno and Bakersfield, I would assume, basically advertise for conventions statewide in the sense that we're in the middle of the state. I know that that's been one of the factors here at what started out as being the start of with the Radisson and then the Marriott taking over afterwards. Has either one of the applicant or the assessor looked at Fresno or Bakersfield in comparison to those facilities that are next to a convention center versus this facility?
I have not had any specific information available to do that.
Assessor?
Assessor's office has not either, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
Assessor's office hasn't either. We did look for some comparables that would reflect that type of relationship, but
And how much of that, of your performance, is based upon what is happening with our convention center? How much business do you do because of the convention center and versus just competing with the other hotels in town?
I don't know that I could answer that question specifically, and it has not been indicated to me that they keep those statistics like that fashion.
But if someone was to, let's say, have a wedding, they're going to rent the facility from the convention center, or I guess that you take care of that and charge them a pass-through as to what those expenses are?
I believe so, yes.
Any other questions? Now, going back to, again, the assessor, is there any other cross-examination that you would like to make of the applicant? Or have we done that?
I'd like to just make a statement or two. In regards to the expense, the board's going to see that in his presentation. And I've reviewed the actual general ledger from that year. Our assessor's office did an audit on the personal property during the year in question, and so we were provided by the Marriott the entire general ledger. And looking through there, I can't find a line item where it shows the income generated by the convention center rentals. There's an expense line for it, though. So looking at that, without being able to determine the actual income associated with that type of part of their business, I believe to taking or deducting an expense for it, when we're not generally sure of where it might be reflected in there, is probably not a wise thing in the income approach to do. Looking at the income expenses, just making my point again, you have to reconcile with all three approaches. To take one and have a myopic view of what the actual market value is not a wise move. To look at the local sales, even if they are of inferior limited service hotels, are an indication of what the value is for that particular facility locally. Obviously, it is still in business and turning a profit, which means that its use in the local market is being supported. So looking at the overall valuation, I don't think it's prudent to ignore the actual market and to go with what is anticipated income when you have directly in front of you the relationships, the perceptions, and the forecasts being demonstrated in those comparable sales.
Okay, anything else from the applicant regarding what the assessor just said?
Well, you know, I do agree that you can look at other methodologies in terms of, say, a sales approach to value. However, you need to find properties that sell that are like your property. And as it's been indicated today, none of those were found. So that if you don't have that, then it's not a good methodology to use. Secondly, this property, if you look at a replacement cost approach to value, I don't know that it would be built the way it exists today. It's 195 rooms. You might build something that's 100 or 125 rooms. And you might not build it at all in today's economy. Thirdly, if you do look at the income stream, you have to allow for the expenses that generate the revenue. If the convention center needs additional space at the convention facility, it has to pay for that, and that expense is an allowable expense because that is what helps generate the revenue that the property generates, and the revenue is there. So that you have to allow for the expenses that help you generate the revenue. Thirdly, the reserve for replacement, I think, is a reasonable expense. It's typical in the lodging industry, and it's one that is expected. If you look at this facility, and again on January 1, 2009, what we're doing is trying to determine the value that we're going to pay taxes on for the coming fiscal year. So you are projecting that value into the future, and I think you have to look at the revenue projection as a projection into the future. Looking at that, and I was asked the question as to what the actual 2009 net income was, comparable to a number that the assessor brought up, and he was looking at a number of $1.2 million. In 2009, that dropped to $823,000. And I think that there has to be consideration given to that, and I don't think the assessor's office is.
Okay. And I noticed on your application that you did not request a finding of fact?
No, sir, I didn't.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Any other conclusions that we want to make before we end our hearing?
I just had one other question. I apologize if you might have stated this earlier, but looking at your profit and loss statement, specifically page 2 of the 2008 actual information, I'm kind of hung up on this replacement reserve item, this 4% that you've adjusted your net NOI percentage, reducing it by the 4%. Where is that reflected on the profit and loss statement? I don't see that item. Is that?
As I previously stated, it is not on the profits and
Okay, I
profit and
apologize.
loss statement.
However, I thought that's what you said, but
Yeah, no,
I would
how
think
would-
something like that, a reserve that they would specifically identify, would have been a line item specifically broken out on the profit and loss. I was just looking for it.
It's not on the profit and loss. There is a separate account for that, and I have provided that information to the assessor's office that shows, and this is it. As of 12/31/2008, there was a balance in that account of $262,997.68.
But they don't recognize it as an expense on their own profit and loss
Not on
statement?
an operating statement, no,
Okay.
but it is an expense. I don't know why it's not on there.
Okay.
I can't answer that question. Do I think it should be on there? Yes, I do.
But they don't even show it on their own profit and loss statement?
Well, they do when it comes to doing the income tax return, yeah. I mean,
What? Say it,
well, okay, this is an operating statement,
right?
and then, when they do their final accounting, it is on there. Actually, in calendar 2008, there was $265,352.68 put into this fund
For that year?
for that year.
Now, you took it as a deduction on your income tax?
Yeah.
It's a deduction from income, yes.
Right,
Ultimately, yeah.
really?
That year?
Okay.
Well, this is a unique piece of property in the county in the sense that, this goes back to 1980s and the beginning of the 90s when this was developed by the city of Visalia. And the developer went broke in the middle of construction, and then city operated it for a number of years, and then they sold it. So this particular piece of property is unique in the county that I know of. So in effect, if there isn't any other comments from the applicant or the assessor, any others that you'd like to conclude with?
I don't think so.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and take this under advisement and come up with a decision within 60 days.
I'm
should-
going to request.
Yes, well, the thing is that should we more or less, we have to come up with a finding within 60 days, do we not?
Can extend it, I think, let's see.
And we may want to extend it
Yeah,
for
let me
maybe
check
an
and see.
additional 30 days.
Well,
But the thing is that we'll,
I think if we can do it within the 60, because we have 2 meetings before the 60, so, or 1 meeting between the 60, so we can come back the next meeting.
right. So in other words, we can hear it in closed session today and then review it again before we actually come up with our preliminary findings. Is
Well,
that
okay,
correct?
come up with preliminary findings, and we can
Right.
review those, okay.
Okay. Very good. Thank you very much, and this concludes our testimony for this case.
Thank you.
Moving on to agenda item number 7. Is there anyone here in the audience from Cal Citrus Services? Okay. And would you like to come in and be sworn in?
Mr. Chairman, I must be excused from this one.
You wanna,
He is married to my wife.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, I'm going to take a break for a minute.
If you wouldn't mind being sworn in by the clerk?
I think the assessor needs to be sworn as well.
Before we do though, Mr. Chairman, unless we're going to go to testimony today, it sounds like there's a verbal stipulation to the real property. Has the personal property issue?
Well, we have a stipulation on this?
A verbal on the real property,
Not on the person.
personal? Okay, then yes. Forgive me.
Okay, so we do need to go ahead and swear in our applicant? Okay, the assessor's already been sworn in.
No.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Then go ahead and swear them both.
Yes.
Okay, if you wouldn't mind announcing the nature of the case, in other words, what your appeal was based on, and the tax roll for the current, the year of your appeal is, is 1,323,266? Is that correct?
Could you repeat that again, please?
The assessment of the roll for the property is current, for the year that we're taking a look at is 1,323,266.
I think we used the wrong number there. I think it was from the previous year. My accountant passed away, and he took care of all this
Okay.
for many years, and I stepped in when he passed away, and in that following, or in that time period, there was not a
And what's your opinion of value?
640,007, wait a minute.
The value on the roll is.
Oh, on the roll?
Yes. The value on the roll,
17,700.
okay, and your opinion of value
640,781.
and the nature of the case?
I'm
What-
sorry?
What is the reason for the appeal?
Well, this facility was not in use. It was vacant for several years, or not, there was no packing going on. We weren't using it at all. And so when my accountant passed away, I took over all these things and started looking at them. And on this particular facility, it was costing somewhere around $50,000 with taxes, insurance, and the city, just to have it sitting there. So I decided that was kind of dumb. So I started trying to see about selling it or getting rid of it. And I did talk to a couple people, city being one of them, City of Lindsay. And it came down to our neighbor, which is Badger Packing Company. And I talked to Rick and asked him if he'd be interested, or they'd be interested in purchasing it. So we did work out a lease purchase for $500,000, and we're in our second year into it. It's a 5-year lease, which I have copies of the lease.
3-year.
3-year lease, I'm sorry. And with the $50,000 a year, with it going towards the purchase price. And so that when we did this, then I looked at what it's appraised for, and it didn't make any sense. So that's why I made the application. And at that point, Rick Badger had already leased it, lease purchase. So basically, next summer,
June 1st.
June 1st, the lease will be over, and they'll take it, and we're out of it. So that's the reason I started the process.
Okay, so there was a lease purchase.
The process had been started previous to our lease purchase of reassessing the value on the property. Like he said, the property had sat vacant for 3 years. The 1.3 million was what the real value was in the real world, was way overinflated. And so I think he was just trying to get some relief, not only from Tulare County as far as property taxes go. He talked to the city of Lindsay too about dropping their utility charges on the property since it was vacant. And so anyway, the process had been started even before we entered into, now got a bit of value on it, what we think it was worth, and the actual sales price, falls much more in line with the numbers that he was asking, to reduce the values to, and that's kind of where we're at. And as far as that goes, the real property has been, stipulated, they've agreed upon dropping the price on the real property. So now where we're at, I believe, is just coming to a final agreement on the equipment and fixtures in the property.
Do you have any documentation you want to submit to the board regarding that purchase price? And-
Yeah, I have copies of the lease
Okay.
purchase.
Thank you.
Anything else other than this that you'd like to present at this time?
Not really. They praised, appraiser came several months ago and worked with our new CPA, and they went through the whole process, but he's got all the numbers, the CPA does, so I don't know what the outcome of that was. And then Rick talked to, what's the fellow's name, on the land.
The real property, we talked to,
John Bradford.
Bedford.
Oh,
Right.
okay, and so he came up with number, which I don't remember.
Okay. Then would the assessor like to make their presentation?
The values that were entered on the application were actually from the 2008 assessed year. So the values are slightly different. The real property values have increased, in accordance with Prop 13, so they're very similar. The personal property is actually decreased from the values on the application, the factoring down for depreciation. So the original values that you read, Mr. Chairman, were correct for that year, the 1.3 million, 23,266 total.
Okay.
And there was also a 10% penalty that year for Section 463 for failure to file. They did not file their property statement that year, and according to the applicant, it was because of the death of their public accountant.
So is that penalty part of this hearing?
I think
I
we
don't-
paid it. I don't know. I
They
think we
had
paid
just
it.
mentioned that, we'd spoken briefly in the hallway, and they had, I brought up the issue of the Section 463 penalty, which was adding the additional 10% onto their assessment, and he had explained that the CPA had passed away, and that's why the statement didn't get filed, so.
Okay.
And, as you know, our office can adjust for the 463 penalty, but I believe it's within your
Okay.
range. The taxpayer bought the property, the equipment and fixtures for $1.8 million, but the equipment is old. So we currently, for the 2010 year, had it assessed at $528,000 approximately. We did that using state-issued factor tables, same method that we use for everybody throughout the county to keep things consistent and provide uniformity, appraisal practices. The taxpayer also has two other packing houses in the same area, and those packing houses are not being contested as to the values, but yet we're valuing them in the same manner using historical cost approach. We haven't received any information as of yet, such as outside appraisals or anything else to support a reduction of value. There is the contract, which was entered into, I believe, in June of 2010, but we're actually looking at January 1st of 2010 as the lien date.
So is the assessor requesting a postponement on this based upon additional information, a continuance of the case until you get additional information?
I don't know if there is any additional information available in talking to the taxpayer. The assessor is in the position that we valued the equipment in accordance with law, and I don't see a reason to reduce the value at this point.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Okay.
And then as far as the real property is concerned, is there any issues there that would require additional analysis from the assessor?
I mean, we took a look at the sales contract as well on it.
Yes.
Determined that the price looks to be reflective of market, so we went through and made an allocation out of that purchase price towards the real property. So I think we've agreed to somewhere in the neighborhood of about 250,000 on the real property. 60?
So we don't have, we're not ready to read in a stipulation yet, but we are going to?
I believe if the applicant's okay with it, they can verbally stipulate to the board today that they're fine with the real property values and then just pursue the personal property issue if there needs to be a continuance beyond today.
Okay, but the assessor for the personal property is indicating that the roll is correct as it currently is?
That's correct. I would suggest maybe we remove the 463 penalty.
You are going to remove the penalty?
We don't have authority to remove the penalty, but your board does.
I see. Okay.
I have some questions.
Okay.
Have you done any appraisal work on this, or have you gone to visit the property?
There was an audit completed by a staff member in my office, and it was finished June 20th of this year. And no issues were brought up at that time with the auditor as far as removing or reducing assessed value. And there's actually an increase in value as a result of the audit.
So what is our difference now? What are you saying is the value, and what are you saying is the value?
For the 2010 year, yes, the assessor's office has a value of approximately $528,000 on the equipment and fixtures, and the applicant is requesting that it be valued at $250,000.
Talking about $250,000 difference.
That's correct.
Is the equipment usable at this point?
When the
Would you turn it on?
Yes. When the auditor was there, it is an active packing house. It's being leased by Badger Packing, and they are utilizing the original equipment in addition to using some equipment that they've apparently brought in the meantime.
Badger is using this equipment. Did you use this equipment? You said it was vacant for a number of years.
It was vacant for 2 or 3 years, I believe, before we made this agreement. We had not been using it.
You did not use it yourself?
We were not packing, no. We have the other facility. After the Valencias went out and the volume went down, we usually use that for Valencias. We got rid of all our Valencias. So the other packing house was sufficient, and it was just sitting there. We had used the cold storage a few times when we needed it and brought fruit over and put it in the cold storage. But that was pretty much it, and it had not run. And that's why the city, my gosh, it was like, I forget what it was a month. It was horrendous. And my accountant handled it all. I looked into it, and I think, this is stupid. You give it away.
No, the accountants over in Lindsay, you gotta worry about.
Well, Don handled it. Don Bessie handled it for years, and he did all of it, and that's why we just didn't get filed, because he died and just everything was in a big turmoil, and somewhere or another that slipped through the cracks and didn't get done.
The other, probably most important question is all of the equipment that is being assessed included in the contract for the $500,000?
Correct, it is, yes.
No equipment over and above what was in that contract?
In the lease purchase, that's what you're speaking of?
Yeah.
Yeah, all the equipment on the premises are included.
And we did an addendum, this last page, at the request to clarify that this addendum was just put together here just a few weeks ago.
Okay.
Clarify the fact that they purchased everything in the lease purchase. And the lease purchase is the lease all cost of 50,000 a year all goes towards the purchase. So at the end of the lease in the next year, they'll owe us 350,000, and it's theirs. We're out of it.
Do you have any reason to believe, as the assessor's office, that either the buyer or the seller are not knowledgeable?
No.
If I'm understanding this correctly, have we done, what is the breakdown between, someone's got to do a breakdown between the equipment and the real property? If the purchase, am I correct?
Well, basically, the assessor, as I understand it, the real property, and you please correct me if I'm wrong, okay? The real property division of this question went to Tim. They said, okay, we think $260,000 of the $500,000 represented the real property, and therefore we accept that value. The personal property division of the assessor's office says, no, the remaining $240,000 isn't enough to cover the real property value of this property.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yep.
Okay?
Is that correct?
That's
That's
exactly
correct.
correct.
Okay. And any other, your comment regarding what you just heard as far as that breakdown, is there any difference there?
You go ahead, Rick.
I'd just like to say that, again, what the county is using in their values is a cost figure. And, you know, we've got this lease purchase in front of us that shows what the actual transaction is going to be. And, you know, so I just don't see how you can, you know, pull numbers from out of the air or use historical numbers when today's numbers is what we're doing in this transaction.
I understand. On your application, you have not checked anything regarding a written finding of fact. Do you know what that is?
Excuse me?
There is a question on the application number 7, request for finding of fact. What that gives you is a written response to your application once the board has come to a conclusion. Are you requesting a finding of fact?
Yes.
It's a $250 charge,
And it needs to be paid now.
and it needs to be paid before the hearing, before the conclusion of this. And the reason for that usually is so that if you want to appeal the decision of the board to the Superior Court, is usually.
No.
So you're
I'm
waiving
not
it.
going to appeal it, just whatever the board decides.
Yeah, you're waiving that.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. Okay,
And did you want to consider the penalty issue?
yes, but does the board wish to discuss that with the regular, because this is a little complicated, we're going to need to go through some documentation and come up with a finding, which will take us a while. Are we at a point where we want to take this under consideration, or does the board want to continue with it as ruling at the point? I assume that the other case that we heard was complicated enough where we indicated we wanted to take that under advisement. How does the board feel about this?
Under advisement,
I think that would be a good thing to do. Okay? So, regarding the findings, we will give you a notification of the results of the appeal within 60 days. Okay? And we'll take it under advisement and come to a conclusion, and then give you our preliminary findings.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 8. Is that where we are? And that is indicated as a withdrawal. Is that correct? Is there anybody here? Dan Cheney?
Chairman, the remaining people in the gallery are assessors office personnel.
So that there is no one here, and that one is on the agenda as a withdrawal?
That's correct. correct. I believe he submitted it late.
If you want, we could probably do that with the withdrawal calendar.
Yes, that's what I was just looking through to make sure we've gotten everything else taken care of, with the exception of agenda item number 9 through 13, which, again, I'm assuming that no one has responded on those. Mr. Assessor, do you have any other comment on those items?
Mr. Chairman, the majority of them, we have provided some type of reduction to the taxpayer. It may not have been directly at their opinion, but close to it. There's only one of them where we suggested no change to the assessment, and in speaking with the appellant, they agreed that there shouldn't be any for that year. So it's not a lack of response. We've been in contact with all of them and have generally worked out some type of agreeable arrangement in the assessor's office and the appellants.
So in that particular case, then, do we need to maybe make a motion that we're going
deny
to
this.
deny these for non-appearance? All of them?
Yes, 9 to 13. So
9
we
to
can just do,
13.
yeah, we could just do 9 to 13 all in one.
And then we can still, you can go ahead and continue working with them then, for whatever agreeable disposition you're going to have, because we're going to go ahead and declare them as non-appearance.
As soon as the cases are resolved today, we'll go ahead and process the corrections for them. So,
Okay.
Chairman, I move that we deny for non-appearance items 9, 13 on our agenda.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries for agenda item number 9 through 13. Now, going back to, again, agenda item number 8 is a withdrawal. We should add that to our withdrawal calendar that has been submitted for the day. Has everyone been able to take a look at the withdrawal calendar?
Chairman, I move we accept both withdrawals and withdrawal calendar.
And agenda number 8? Agenda item 8?
And, yeah, I'm sorry, I thought it had been moved over. Okay, 8, and agenda item number 8.
We have a motion, we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second to accept the withdrawal calendar of agenda item number 8, and the withdrawal calendar is presented. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? We're, I believe, done. Is there any other items that would like to come before the hearing? Any other comments from the panel members? Hearing none, the Assessment Appeals Board hearing for July 16th is now closed and will adjourn under closed session.